Layla Al-Mansoor was young, rich, and bored. Karim El-Fahdi was older, married, he walked with purpose, dressed in fitted shirts and slacks, usually with a gym bag over his shoulder. She changed her schedule just to be on the balcony when he arrived. She memorized his movements. He was standing next to a white Mercedes SUV, looking down at his phone. In the elevator, at the lobby cafe, even at the same treadmill row in the building gym. Layla told herself it was just curiosity, just fun. A gym towel forgotten on a bench. A smile held a little longer in the elevator. A book left open near the cafe table where he liked to sit. One day she followed him discreetly to his car, watching from a distance as he adjusted the mirror. He said she had great taste in books. She smiled, replied politely, and walked away. But inside her world flipped. He noticed her. He had been watching. She wasn't invisible. That night she couldn't sleep. She thought about his wife, his home, his daily routines. That it was only a matter of time before he left his old life behind. She thought about how easy it would be to step into his life and become something more. Nothing serious. She wasn't trying to destroy anything. She just liked the way he looked at her. The way she felt noticed, desired. It was obsession mixed with emptiness, a cocktail she drank more of each day. Layla's apartment started to feel like a stage, and she was waiting for Karim to become her co-star. She wondered if he watched her too. She even started dressing differently on her balcony, angling her body toward his window as if performing. She imagined walking beside him at the mall, sitting next to him on flights, being the one who greeted him at the door. Each thought made her more desperate. She began checking his wife's boutique page online, studying her style, her events, her posts. She wondered if Rania knew, if she suspected anything. Each time there was a glance, a flicker of recognition. Layla started wearing different workout clothes, tighter, brighter. She adjusted her perfume. She walked slower through the lobby just in case he was near. It wasn't long before she learned his name from the building's online community board, Karim El-Fahdi. 38 years old, marketing executive. Lunch turned into hotel rooms and beach cabanas paid for in cash. It was all so hidden, so exciting. Layla used fake names when booking. Karim never brought his phone. They both pretended it was temporary, just passion, just escape. But the lines blurred quickly. She wanted more than just a few hours a week. She wanted promises. She wanted his life. Married to Rania El-Fahdi, who owned a boutique in Jumeirah. Their eyes met for a second. He gave a polite nod and stepped aside. She smiled briefly and drove away, her heart pounding. That was the first real moment between them, but it was enough to spark something dangerous. She noticed when he left for work, when he returned from the gym, and when he ordered food delivery. She noticed his moods, too. Some days he looked energized, others tired or distracted. Once, she saw him standing alone in the darkened living room, staring out the same window, and she wondered if he had secrets, too. His movements were neat, deliberate. He had a clean-shaven face and a sharp jawline, and always checked his watch before unlocking his door. Sometimes, he would greet someone inside. A woman, probably his wife, would meet him at the entrance, and they would exchange a quick kiss before vanishing into the apartment. It was that image simple, ordinary that made Layla's heart beat faster. She didn't know his name or what he did, but something about him felt magnetic. In her world of filtered smiles and shallow connections, this stranger looked real and dangerously charming. Rania El-Fahdi was the elegant wife who saw everything. What began as a secret affair spiraled into obsession, betrayal, and a murder that stunned Dubai's elite. In one of the most luxurious neighborhoods in Dubai, nestled among glass skyscrapers and palm-lined walkways, lived 25-year-old Layla Al-Mansoor. She came from old Emirati wealth, her father a powerful businessman. Her mother, a quiet woman known for attending charity galas and art exhibitions. Layla's life looked flawless on the surface. She lived in a modern apartment tower that overlooked the sparkling waters of the Dubai Marina, a place filled with high-end cafes, luxury yachts, and a constant buzz of wealthy tourists and residents. Her days were often slow but filled with elegance, mornings at the gym, afternoons in curated boutiques, and evenings spent scrolling through social media or editing selfies with perfect lighting. She drove a sleek white Porsche Cayenne and wore only the most exclusive labels. Everything about her presence was carefully controlled, from her long, straight hair to the way she posed in front of mirrored elevators. But beneath the perfection, there was a growing void. She developed a strange, new habit watching people from her apartment. Her tower gave her a clear view of another luxury building across the street. From her balcony, she could see into several living rooms, bedrooms, and kitchens. It started innocently just observing. People coming home with grocery bags. Children doing homework on their couches. A couple cooking dinner together. But one particular apartment caught her attention. Her friends were more like social media acquaintances, their friendships based on likes and tagged photos, not conversations or trust. Her parents were rarely in the country, always off to London or Geneva or the Maldives. They kept her bank account full and the fridge stocked, but the apartment often felt like a gilded cage. Layla had everything money could buy, yet she was bored, restless, and alone. That loneliness turned into curiosity. Every evening around 6, a tall man would come home. Soon, watching him became a part of her routine. Then, one evening, something changed. She was leaving the underground parking garage after a workout when she nearly bumped into him. Over the next few days, their paths crossed again. Finding out he was married didn't stop her interest. In fact, it made everything more exciting. She started leaving subtle hints. The fantasy became addictive. It wasn't love, not really. Then came the day he spoke to her. Not a full conversation, just a simple compliment in passing at the lobby's coffee stand. From there, everything moved faster. Texts were exchanged through a shared gym contact. Meetings became routine. Coffee became lunch. Alone in her apartment, she imagined what it would feel like to be Mrs. El-Fahdi. Layla told herself she was winning, that Karim was slowly falling for her. But the truth was more dangerous than she realized. And someone else had been watching too. Layla began to live for the stolen moments. Her mornings were filled with anticipation, her afternoons dragged by, and her nights were restless with thoughts of Karim. He became the center of her world, the only thing that made her heart race in an otherwise dull and privileged life. Discreet cafes in El Barsha, empty hotel rooms booked through burner apps, quiet beach resorts during off hours. They planned everything. She dyed her hair a shade darker. He bought a second phone. It was thrilling, dangerous, and intoxicating. She once walked into his wife's boutique under a fake name just to see her up close. She didn't buy anything. She simply looked around, smiled at Rania, and left without a word. That night she wrote about it in her notebook. A small, leather-bound journal she kept hidden in a drawer under old fashion magazines. She sent Karim a message late one night telling him she couldn't go on like this. The words shattered her. Layla stared at the message for a long time. Then she packed a small bag, took her notebook, and left her apartment. Security cameras later showed her exiting the building alone just before midnight. Her destination was unknown. She needed clarity. She needed him to make a choice. She told herself it was time for an ultimatum. Either he left Rania or she would disappear from his life. A rich young girl betrayed. A respected husband with a hidden life. The story was irresistible to the public. But behind the scenes, the truth was more complicated than anyone could imagine. And it was far from over. When he didn't respond for 2 days, she grew desperate. She considered walking up to his apartment. She thought about calling Rania and exposing everything. Then she considered something darker, something that would end the pain, end the waiting, end the silence. In it, she wrote down her thoughts, her fears, her strategies. She listed Karim's routines, analyzed his body language, and even sketched what their future house might look like. Just her bag with the notebook and a diamond necklace tucked inside a gift from Karim during one of their secret meetings, engraved with his initials. The police immediately suspected him. The evidence pointed directly at his involvement. He was arrested within hours. The lines between fantasy and reality began to dissolve. With every encounter, Layla believed she was becoming more essential to him. The messages slowed. He canceled plans. He told Layla he was busy with work, that things were tense at home. She tried to stay calm, to play it cool. But it was impossible. She had tasted his world and wasn't ready to let go. Her calls became more frequent. She left cryptic notes under his car's windshield. She waited near the elevator in case he might pass by. Karim began to worry. He feared she might do something reckless. He feared Rania might find out. And above all, he feared losing control over the carefully curated life he had spent years building. She saw it in the way he looked at her when they parted, the pauses in his breath when she touched his hand, the way he sometimes smiled at his phone and then quickly locked it. Over the next few days, she pieced together the truth. She checked Karim's emails, his expense records, his digital calendar. She found gaps, receipts paid in cash, deleted entries. Then she found the booking confirmation for a private hotel suite made under the name Layla Noor. It was enough. She didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, she kept quiet and began to observe. She followed Layla from a distance, saw her habits, learned her patterns. Rania began keeping her own journal, a mirror image of Layla's, filled with notes, dates, and sketches. The way he started going to the gym at odd hours. She said nothing, but she watched. One day she followed him. He drove to a beach resort far outside the city. She waited in her car until he exited with a young woman, tall, elegant, familiar. It was the same girl she had seen once in the lobby, the one who dressed like a model and always wore sunglasses indoors. She imagined that he thought of her even when he was with his wife, that he pictured her face in the mirror of his home. Every time she received a message from him disguised under a false contact name, her fingers would tremble as she read his brief, carefully chosen words. His life was no longer simple. Every lie he told Rania chipped away at his peace. He still loved his wife in a quiet, dependable way, but the thrill of being desired by someone like Layla had seduced him. Layla was young, bold, and spontaneous. She made him feel like the man he used to be before his life became a cycle of meetings, polite dinners, and obligatory vacations. Yet deep down, he knew it couldn't last. Layla wanted too much. She had started asking questions about his schedule, about his wife, about why he never stayed the night. At first he brushed it off. He said he needed time. But with every passing week, her patience thinned. They never spoke of love. They never promised anything. But to Layla, every meeting was a signal that he was coming closer, that he was slipping further away from the life he shared with Rania. Their encounters were always wrapped in secrecy. They met in places far from the marina, places where no one would recognize them. Karim, however, lived with a growing storm. Layla began testing boundaries. She showed up unexpectedly near his office building. Karim started pulling away. Rania had always been perceptive. She noticed the smallest changes. At first, it was just a gut feeling, Karim's sudden need for privacy. Rania took photos, not with anger but with cold, methodical precision. She wanted proof. Meanwhile, Layla reached her breaking point. On the third day, Karim finally responded. He said they needed to stop, that it had gone too far, that he couldn't do this anymore. The next morning, she was found lifeless on a beach. Her body bruised and partially buried in the sand, no witnesses. No cameras, no phone. The media exploded with headlines. A high society love affair turned deadly. Rania sat alone in the living room of her high-rise apartment, the silence around her growing heavier by the hour. Karim had been taken away in handcuffs just hours earlier. Her husband, the man she had shared a life with for 10 years, was now the main suspect in a murder investigation. The news spread fast. By noon, whispers had begun in their building. By evening, it was all over social media. Layla Al-Mansoor's name trended alongside his. Everyone had an opinion. It wouldn't give her back the years she had given him. To Rania, it confirmed what she had feared all along. Layla had been watching her too. She noted every move the detectives made, every question they asked. She stayed ahead of them, prepared for anything. She even deleted a string of text messages from a burner number she had once used to contact Layla anonymously, warning her to stay away from Karim. But the officers were now focused on her, quietly comparing her timeline to Karim's. They started reviewing surveillance footage from her boutique. It didn't take long to connect the gloves to Rania. In a quiet room inside the station, she broke her silence. She confessed not with tears or apologies, but with cold finality. Layla collapsed instantly. There was blood, Panic, silence. In those next moments, Rania said, she didn't think, she just acted. She didn't cry during the trial. She didn't plead. She only stared straight ahead as the verdict was read, her eyes calm, as if she had finally completed something she'd planned all along. She wrapped the body in a rug, loaded it into the trunk of her car, and drove toward the empty stretch of beach far from the marina. She left the body near the shoreline, partially buried it in sand, and drove back before sunrise. To shift suspicion, she planted Kareem's necklace in the bag, knowing the police would find it and draw the conclusion she wanted. She had invited Layla to meet her under false pretenses, offering a private styling session late at night in the boutique. Layla had arrived, expecting something else. What followed wasn't premeditated, Rania claimed, but something born of fury. She had confronted her, hoping to scare her off, to end the nightmare. But Layla hadn't backed down. According to Rania, she had laughed, mocking her, saying that Kareem had already made his choice. She had worn them often during cooler months and even posted a picture of them online months before. Most of it was uneventful, but one night caught their attention, an evening just before Layla's body was discovered, when the boutique stayed open late. Rania had closed shop early and wasn't seen on camera again until morning. Kareem was released from custody, but the damage to his life was already done. His career was ruined, his reputation shattered. The elite circles of Dubai that once praised him now turned away. He moved out of the marina and disappeared from the public eye. Her phone was off during those hours. That silence in itself became suspicious. It was a risk she had taken months earlier when the affair first became obvious. But the towers stood tall, the yachts still sailed, and life continued. In the end, only silence remained in the apartment across from Layla's, and behind its window, no one was watching anymore. Layla had never responded. But Rania had no intention of leaving loose threads. But she also knew that Layla wasn't just some young girl chasing romance. She was dangerous, she was obsessive. And Rania had proof. In the days after Kareem's arrest, Rania opened the photos she had taken of Layla's notebook, the one the police had found with her body. The physical evidence pointed at Kareem, but something felt off. His car had been near the crime scene, but the timeline was vague. The necklace found in Layla's bag seemed incriminating, but it wasn't enough. Forensics uncovered a single strand of hair under Layla's fingernails, long, black, and clearly from another woman. That discovery shifted the direction of the case completely. She had accessed the images secretly, having stolen quick snapshots while the investigators examined the bag. In the pages, Layla had written in alarming detail about Kareem's life. She had tracked his schedule, his patterns, even made notes on Rania's own boutique hours and personal habits. The notebook was filled with a mix of longing, fantasy, and threat. Phrases like, "If I can't have him, no one will," and "she won't matter soon" stood out in red ink. But Rania remained still, her face unreadable, her fingers quietly scrolling through headlines and speculation. The detectives had visited her that morning. They asked her about her marriage, about Kareem's habits, and about his whereabouts the night Layla disappeared. Rania gave them answers that were short, controlled, and polite. She had pieced it together bit by bit, a puzzle of receipts, glances, and lies. Not every day, just enough to learn her rhythm. Layla was predictable. She went to the same gym, bought coffee from the same place, and walked the same paths in the marina. She dressed boldly but moved quietly. She liked to be noticed but also enjoyed the illusion of privacy. Rania watched from a distance, always careful, always calculating. She once stood a few feet from her inside a boutique and wondered if Layla recognized her. She didn't. The moment she saw Kareem with Layla at the resort, something inside her shifted. Not with rage, not with heartbreak, but with a cold understanding that the life she had built was already gone. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She watched. She studied Layla like a hunter studies prey. She told them Kareem had been at home that night, asleep beside her, and that she hadn't noticed anything unusual. The officers took notes, nodded, and left. But Rania knew they didn't believe her, and she didn't care. She had already made her choice. For weeks before Layla's death, Rania had known about the affair. She began following her. Rania knew confronting her husband wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't erase what he had done. To the police, this painted Layla as unstable. As the investigation deepened, Rania maintained her distance. She continued working at the boutique, smiling at customers, pretending nothing had changed, but her mind remained sharp. Behind closed doors, the police were struggling with the case. They brought Rania in for further questioning. This time, she was more guarded. She denied everything. She repeated the same alibi. In an unmarked trash bin behind the building, a pair of leather gloves was discovered during a secondary sweep. Blood traces inside matched Layla's DNA. Faced with mounting evidence, Rania's mask finally slipped. That laugh was the breaking point. Rania struck her with a heavy decorative vase, one of many she used in store displays. When the confession was made public, it shocked everyone. Rania was sentenced to life in prison. The story of Layla, Karim, and Rania haunted Dubai's social elite for months. Whispers filled every corner of the marina. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, curious residents, and silent observers filled every seat, waiting to hear the final details of a story that had gripped Dubai. Outside, camera crews stood behind barricades, their microphones raised like weapons, ready to broadcast the latest twist in a case that felt more like a movie than reality. They presented photos of Layla's notebook, testimony from forensics experts, security footage, GPS records, and finally the gloves found behind Rania's boutique. But what truly stunned the courtroom was the way everything had been planned, not in rage or chaos, but methodically. They brought in psychologists to describe the effects of prolonged stress, humiliation, and fear of public shame in conservative high society. He looked hollow, thin, as though he hadn't slept in weeks. His name had been cleared, but the stain on his life remained. At her funeral, her mother clutched a framed photo of Layla as a child, long before luxury and loneliness had shaped her. No one spoke much during the ceremony. Most of the family didn't know how to describe what had happened. Neighbors whispered in elevators. The security guards who had once greeted Karim now avoided mentioning his name. She read books, rarely spoke, and never discussed the past. She kept a single item hidden in the pages of a legal book, a photograph of her and Karim from years ago taken on a beach before their lives began to unravel. She would stare at it for minutes at a time, not with longing or sadness, but as if studying something from another life, a stranger's story frozen in time. There was no regret in her expression, only recognition. The other inmates avoided her, sensing something cold behind her quietness. Rania buried in silence. Yet their story lived on. It became a cautionary tale whispered in salons and luxury gyms, discussed at rooftop dinners and whispered about at brunches. Not because it was rare, but because it was familiar. It was the danger of secrets, the cost of appearances, the way even the most perfect-looking lives could carry poison beneath the surface. She received no visitors. She didn't write letters. Her old boutique social media accounts were deleted. Her name faded from the business world. Only occasionally did her face appear in news segments about the case that once shook Dubai's elite. New tenants moved in, unaware of what had taken place. The gym was repainted. The boutique in Jumeirah changed ownership. Life, like always, moved on. There were no answers, only rumors. The name Karim was not spoken. Nor was Rania's, lights flickering, shadows seen in the windows. But others knew the truth. The influencers still posed against sunsets. But behind every filtered image, behind every luxury car and champagne toast, the memory of what happened remained. A reminder that in Dubai's world of glittering glass and gold, even the brightest lives could cast the darkest shadows. The real curse wasn't in the building, it was in the people. In the choices they made when they thought no one was watching, in the lies they told to protect their illusions, and in the quiet rage that can grow behind a polished smile. His career had collapsed, his clients had dropped him, his friends barely returned his calls. Workers boxed her belongings quickly, removing signs of her life like they were cleaning up a hotel room. Her white Porsche was sold, her clothes were donated. Her notebooks, including the one found in her gym bag, were returned to her family, but they never opened them. They chose to bury them, along with everything else they didn't understand about the daughter they had never truly known. In private, he blamed himself not just for the affair, but for how blind he had been to the storm gathering in his own home. He left Dubai days later, moving to a quieter city in Europe where no one knew his name. He vanished from social media, from headlines, from every place he had once been known. But nothing softened the facts. Nothing explained the quiet ruthlessness of her actions. Others believed Karim was more involved than he claimed, that Rania had taken the fall to protect him. There were theories that Layla had been planning something sinister, pointing to her detailed notebook and erratic writings. The public, hungry for drama, turned the tragedy into a legend. In the end, the court found her guilty of premeditated murder and obstruction of justice. She was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. She didn't flinch when the verdict was announced. Every step Rania took pointed to calculation. She had researched locations without surveillance, deleted digital trails, and even staged a scene to implicate her own husband. Her confession, recorded and transcribed, was read aloud. It chilled the room into silence. Rania El-Fahdi, once known for her grace and business sense, now sat behind a glass wall, wearing a beige prison uniform. Why had Rania, a woman known for restraint, taken it this far? The answer, according to prosecutors, wasn't simple jealousy. It was about control. Rania had built her life on structure and perfection. Her boutique was run like clockwork, her marriage operated under careful rules. When Layla entered that world, not just as a lover, but as an invader who watched, followed, and obsessed, Rania saw her as a threat not just to her marriage, but to the identity she had created. The murder wasn't just an emotional reaction, it was, in the prosecutor's words, an act of erasure. Her expression was blank, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She stared ahead, neither angry nor afraid. The prosecution laid out the evidence with cold precision. What remained unclear, however, was why. The defense tried to argue diminished responsibility. They painted Rania as a woman emotionally pushed to the edge by betrayal. As the court emptied, Karim stood outside in a sea of reporters, but the story refused to fade. Online forums lit up with speculation. Some claimed Rania had acted in self-defense, that Layla had attacked her first. Meanwhile, the Al-Mansoor family mourned in silence. Their daughter had lived like a shadow in their vast house, loved quietly and lost loudly. After the funeral, Layla's apartment was cleared out. Months passed, but the building where the three had once lived remained a silent witness, but not for everyone. In prison, Rania kept to herself. What people didn't know was that in her cell, in a way, everyone involved in the story had vanished. Layla, gone forever. Karim, erased by scandal. Some people said the tower where Layla once lived was cursed. That strange things happened in the apartment that stood empty for months after her death. The city moved on. The yachts still glided through the marina. A year after the trial, the story of Layla Al-Mansoor's murder still lingered in whispers across Dubai's high society. The city had tried to move on. The boutique Rania once owned now displayed a different name in gold lettering. The tower Layla had lived in was refurbished, its hallways painted anew, the apartment relisted with no mention of its past. He never gave interviews, never released a statement, and never returned to Dubai. The man who once commanded boardrooms and smiled on magazine covers had become a recluse. Her boutique had been sold, her bank accounts frozen. A single envelope, hidden in the lining of a handbag she'd been arrested with, had never been found. She had known for months that Layla had been watching them, photographing them, tracking their lives. She described the moment she found a discarded Polaroid photo of herself taken from a balcony across the street. Among the city's elite, she was remembered not as a victim or a villain, but as a symbol of how easily appearances could deceive. They chose to remember the girl she had been before the affair, bright, hopeful, full of life. But the truth of who she became lived on in the pages she had written. She had crossed lines slowly, at first without even realizing it. Watching turned into following, flirting turned into control. What she had mistaken for love had been something else, something darker, more consuming. And in the end, it had consumed her. Her Instagram account remained frozen in time, a digital grave of filtered photos and inspirational captions. Scandals, affairs, disappearances. Dubai kept moving, new towers rose. New influencers emerged, new names took over old spaces. Where luxury masked loneliness, where desire disguised itself as love. where silence became the most dangerous weapon of all. Not because it was extraordinary, but because it was entirely believable. Behind every perfect balcony, every staged photo, and every polite smile, people wondered how many other stories were just like this one, waiting to unravel. But in certain circles, when people spoke of what lies behind closed doors, they still remembered the girl in the tower. The married man with too many secrets, and the wife who watched it all unfold with terrifying patience. And the woman who waited until silence was no longer enough. Strangers still commented under her posts. Some wrote messages of love and regret. Others blamed her. Others simply left emojis as if unable to say more. Her grave, nestled in a quiet family plot outside the city, received occasional flowers, mostly from her mother, who never spoke publicly about her daughter's life. She realized then that Layla was not just in love with Karim. She was erasing boundaries, fantasizing about replacing her completely. Rania had gone to the boutique that night with the intention of confronting Layla, of ending the nightmare. But what started as confrontation had turned into panic. Inside it was a letter, written to her sister, explaining what had happened in her own words, not the version she gave to the court, but the truth she could never say aloud. But she didn't complain. She didn't resist. She had entered prison like she had entered the courtroom, composed, silent, and in full control of herself. The guards noted her calm behavior. She never started trouble, never raised her voice. She was a model inmate, yet no one could get close to her. She didn't talk about her past. She didn't speak Layla's name. He lived in a quiet coastal town, working remotely in low-profile marketing gigs. His neighbors knew little about him. He spoke politely, paid on time, and kept to himself. Sometimes he walked to the sea and stood there for hours, staring at the horizon without moving. In her mind, she hadn't murdered a rival. She had stopped a threat. But it didn't matter now. The world had made up its mind, and she had accepted the punishment with the same quiet precision she had lived her life by. He had lost everything: his career, his marriage, his reputation, and, most of all, his sense of identity. A young couple from Europe eventually rented it, unaware of the events that had unfolded inside. To them, it was simply a space with a great view and a good price. But for those who remembered, nothing about it was ordinary. Though the media had stopped covering the case, the memory of it remained active in the minds of many. In private parties, behind tinted car windows and cafe brunches, people still asked, what really happened between them? Was it just an affair gone wrong? Or was there more to the story, something deeper, darker? Karim, now living in Portugal under a different name, stayed away from public life. He thought about Layla often, not with longing but with confusion. He still couldn't understand how a casual affair had spiraled into something fatal. He had never promised her anything. He had never asked her to wait. In his mind, it was always supposed to end quietly. But Layla hadn't seen it that way. He remembered the last time he saw her face angry, tearful, determined. He didn't know she would die just days later. And even now, with the truth revealed and Rania behind bars, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had played a part in it. A different decision, a clearer boundary, a final conversation, any of those might have changed the outcome. Instead, he had walked away, and someone else had finished the story for him. Inside the Dubai prison, Rania followed a strict routine. Wake up, exercise, read, sleep. She refused visitors. Her family had stopped writing. What no one knew was that Rania had kept one secret, even through all the interrogations and confessions. In the letter, Rania revealed that she had discovered Layla's obsession much earlier than anyone had suspected. She never sent the letter. She never intended to. It was a way to free herself, to explain something she knew the world would never understand. As for Layla, her name became a cautionary tale. The notebooks Layla had filled with her fantasies and plans were sealed away by her family. In the months that followed, other stories came and went. It wasn't just a crime. It was a mirror held up to a society obsessed with image and control. And though time moved forward and the names faded from headlines, the story remained. In the end, there were no heroes. Only a girl who watched too long, a man who stayed too quiet.